I am unashamed. What about you?
We got Jace back in the house.
I'm back. I know y'all missed me.
We did miss you, Jay. But we had a lot of really interesting guests that rotated through your chair. So it was
Jace, your face came across my radar when I pulled up to that hook net above that old concrete bridge over there.
Yeah.
I just caught 2 fine Opelousas cat the first time I ran it. They had a big op feed. I mean,
y'all
it was
eaten,
nice. I said, "Oh,
tell me the truth. Y'all have eaten all that
with the fish." She said, "Oh, this is so easy. You make it look so easy." I said, "Yeah." Well, the next time I went, 3 days later, I pulled back up to the same net, same spot, fresh off of having a big Opelousas cat feed off my last catch. I said, "Let's see what we got here." Dan, old Dan was with me. The eunuch was with me. So I got the rope and I started coming up. I said, "Dan," I said, "I don't know what's in this net, but this thing is heavy." I said, "So there's something in it with some weight." When I kept coming up with that thing, and I barely got it up to the top of the water because I just can't lift it. I said, "Dan,
you might want to turn that over to Dan."
I said, "Dan, get over here, get your muscles, kick them in." I said, "It's going to take 2 of us." But when we finally saw what we had caught, I would say close to 500 pounds of needle nose gar.
Ooh,
really?
First time in my commercial fishing career, out of all them years we fished, I've never picked up a hook net where some of them 4 foot long, 3 to 4 or 5 foot long gar, 500 pounds easy. Took all we could do just to get them where I could get
and they're probably all dead. Because they
all
dead.
They died all quick. Dead. Every one of them were dead.
Obviously, there were too many gar.
So you say, how does I took out my knife and I said, I will patch this net later. But fortunately, I had a pair of gloves because the teeth on these gar would have just chewed my fingers off my bone, off the bones. So I just finally got them up there. But it took 1 hour to get all of them gar out of that net and toss them in the bayou up there.
Fertilizer.
I said, man. I said, Dan, I said, I've been in on a lot of capers. I said, but I've never had one net give me this much trouble the entire time I fished them.
But you just described the life of a commercial fisherman.
That's exactly
You have
right.
highs, but the lows.
Oh, the lows are
low.
When I finally got that last one, I said, Dan, I said, I'm going back to the bank. I said, I pulled a muscle over here under my rib cage. I said, I'm going back up on that bank. I said, tie that net out where it'll dry out. I'll patch the holes later. I would cut one string to where that way I could just drag them out of the hole. I made a hole, and I just got to doing that. I said, well, I'm trying to get that strings off of their head, Jace, but they had just rammed them in there.
Oh, those teeth.
And it going past the gills.
Your net might have been a little shallow, sounds like to me.
12 feet deep.
Really?
12 feet deep. And I said, what would a bunch of gar be coming along in a herd, and bound to have been just a stampede of gar coming up this bayou. And somehow
I just think now nobody commercial fishes gar. I mean, when's the last time you heard some people eating some gar?
Well, the thing about it, back when we used to catch them, you actually could sell them. They brought a pretty good price.
I got 30 cents a pound for them.
But they die so quick.
Pretty good. 30 cents is not.
Well, I mean, for the day.
But normally, normally on a hook net, you run it every 3 days, give or take. Depending on what the fish are doing, but I just have one net out, and it's this spot I got it. It has caught a lot of catfish, including the Opelousas. But for some reason or another, I noticed that it was a gar run too.
Well,
you've heard of the term gar hole. I had one going.
Now you know why they couldn't say the gar hole.
Well,
it was rough.
Which for the audience, gar hole is bad. If you say that's a gar hole, that means no good.
I think they figured
it was one of the few times in the last 6 months that I said, Dan, it's not, but I think that was on about a Wednesday, a Thursday. I said, it's not but Thursday. I'll usually wait till Saturday before I take a bath. I said, but this has spurred me on, son. I said, I'm going to have to go find some soap and water. He said, Phil, I can smell you. He said, all that old fish slime coming up on. He said, I can smell you, and it smells
I like
rough.
it that the older dad's gotten, the more he's taken his dad's track of. I take a bath every Saturday, whether I need to or not.
But the Lord took away my sense of smell about a year.
But not ours.
About a year or two ago, I just quit. I quit. I lost my sense of smell, so I couldn't smell them.
I have a
They were all dead, slimy, but they weren't to the rotten stage, but they were dead.
Oh, man.
We're in the spring here. The water's still cool enough.
The stench. I mean, I remember when I was dating Missy, she would be like, "What is that smell?" And I'm like, I don't know, because when you
do get
fish,
used to it.
you get used to it.
You quit smelling it.
And she's like, it just sounds like. I mean, it smells like something rotten. I was like, oh, that's fishing. I said, but I've showered, so the first layer. But you can't. I mean,
it would take like a lot of time for the lower.
Our audience, if I had walked by them and they had been downwind, that they would have shrieked and took off running. The whole bunch would have just broken ran. They said, "Good
probably
night,
gagged.
get me away from him."
I used your line to Missy when we were dating. I said, you got to train yourself every time you sense that smell to say to yourself, it smells like money.
That was some of the words of wisdom I imparted when I was about 30. Jay, well,
I remember 2 weeks ago.
But think about it,
I do
Jace.
remember the past week.
You followed my lead, you and old Al there and old Willie, and you got Jep. You followed the lead, and we worked hard. And you noticed nobody was ever singing the blues, not
Nope.
once.
Nope.
I heard no one singing the blues every week to make a living, but nobody ever complained. Y'all remember back. Y'all remember.
I actually enjoyed it. I mean, there's a kind of a science to it where you're basically turning the river upside down in your mind,
Right.
and finding the traveling lanes and where to put the nets, and it's constantly changing. And I mean, it was fun.
Well,
but you stunk.
Which kind of soured me on fishing now. I don't really enjoy it. But you know what's interesting is that now the equipment stuff. I mean, Jay's got things that sonar,
radar.
he's looking at the fish.
I would call that yuppie fishing.
Well, maybe so.
It's not what Phil and I were doing.
No.
I mean, this is just grunt work. Because everybody else, what's sad in the commercial fishing world, you would see these old timers, and you're like, that's going to be me one day. I mean, you look at them, and it's just not good. It's not a.
Even
not
the
a
game wardens who regulate wildlife and fish, even the game wardens, when I would be over there running fish, even the game wardens, Al, when they rode by in their boats, they didn't check me. They didn't pull over and say, "What are you doing?"
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, they didn't say, "What are you doing? Let's check your fishing license." They just looked over there and they looked at it. And they saw the little crowd there, whatever we were doing, cleaning fish or whatever, and they would just ride on by.
They saw
knew
the
we
picture.
were doing it for a living, and we
Yeah.
weren't looking around waving. No.
Right, and said, those poor fellas.
Look at those poor guys. That's exactly what they said. So couple of things, Jay. So the last podcast you were on, Missy was on here, and we've gotten quite the response to it because you were so squirmy. During you should have seen it.
I mean,
it was something to behold.
There was a lesson in there. I don't know exactly what it was,
but
when
people loved it,
Jace's
and I
woman
loved it.
comes on the scene, close proximity. The closer she gets to him, the quieter he becomes. That's what
you wasn't even here.
He's heard about it.
I just heard about it. Heard Al talking about
boy.
it.
And it was funny. And then I watched it again. And Lisa was watching it, so I watched it with her. And I didn't realize she and I laughed the entire 48 minutes.
Oh, you did?
The whole time. It
wasn't that fun to me. But hey, if everybody enjoyed it, great. I mean, that's how we are at all times.
You were just being prudent around your woman,
it took me back to my childhood because I used to set Willie and Jace up to fight. I would throw out some the right things.
The bait.
He was the Don King.
But, my granddaughter, who is your daughter, had what's the prognosis here?
Well, it's been a rough week.
How long did the operation last?
Over 6 hours. And they said 5.
That girl.
And how many it took multiple doctors, right?
Yeah, there were 2 nature of this. I mean, to describe really.
So the ones who are just tuned in that doesn't know anything about this, just give a little update on when this started from birth, and she was born.
Well, part of what we do, even with our foundation, which we named it after Mia, the Mia Moo, is there's so much lack of understanding and misinformation of what happens down this road. You have a cleft lip that everybody is pretty well familiar with. People have made jokes.
There were a few actors that had it in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I could see that they had done some,
which
this was much more minor.
Which is,
Joaquin
let me,
Phoenix is-
I don't want to mid-sentence, I want to clarify, which is horrible when people, make fun of people like this.
Right.
But when you get into the palate and what they call craniofacial, the bone setup, it becomes way more difficult. And so part of what we do is try to explain that. But look, it's very hard for me to explain because it's like after what I've seen, in the past week and other kids there, because we were at a predominantly kids hospital. It's just not, it goes against what we think of in the medical world as there's a problem and you go fix it. It just doesn't quite work that way. And really, like in Mia, I mean, I'll just speak of Mia's condition. Because what happens
is she didn't have a palate at all, right? When she
she did, but it had a hole or mainly a strip all the way back. Structure's not there.
Hang on, Jace. Let's take a break. So much, is why it's just been such a bummer. You're trying to do the right thing, all this thing. I never really thought about it, but because of people being on the computer so much, it also can hurt in other ways because it's kind of opened the door for cyber thieves and people to come in and try to steal your data, steal things. And one of the things that they steal is your home title, which is kept somewhere in a digital place. And so the latest deal is they come in, they get the title, they put their name on it, then they start borrowing money. But you think it's your house, but actually somebody else owns it until they show up and kick you out of your own house, which is hard to believe that happens, but it does. There's a company that's been a sponsor for our show for a while called Home Title Lock. And basically what they do is put protection to make sure nobody can get to your title. So if you want to check these guys out, you go to HometitleLock.com. Register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then you use the code RADIO to receive 30 days of free protection. So that's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com and make sure your home is your home.
So what happens is the bottom jaw, in her case, grows fine. But that's not good because, it's good, but it's creating the same problem over and over again, and she has our jaw. The Robertsons have, which I learned this just because then everything you're looking at all this technology that the world offers, and they're trying to just get it close. But then they got our bone structure too, because they're having to play off that to figure out
what it's going to be.
Yeah, and so they have a bunch of computer models, and basically the surgeries are trying to get close to what they're forecasting. So
our jaws are.
Our is long protruding jaw, especially like mine and Phil's. 13 before, and all related to this issue, because her top jaw doesn't grow like the bottom jaw; it just sits there.
So the bottom one outruns it
every time, and so they go in there and because it's affecting her.
How in the world could these guys? My hats are off to the guys, the surgeons who work in that particular
Well, I'll tell you
field.
this: these guys. These 2 doctors that were working on
because they don't have an exact script of what you do.
Right. That's why it's hard to explain this, and that's why I don't even go to social media. Or I think Missy posted 1 or 2 posts, but because people just don't understand what they're talking about, and so they're they get it all wrong, and it's not even worth
surgery. You said 13 previously.
Yeah, and so they're everything they had done before.
So this started when she was like how old?
Oh, immediately.
I think the first procedure she was just a few weeks old.
Good
And,
night.
Yeah, her whole life. Almost
But-
averaging one a year.
Well,
for her.
I've never heard that girl complain. Of course, I
she's-
didn't
Well-
raise her. Jace did, but I've never heard the girl complaining
No,
about it.
she don't. I mean, the sad thing about this procedure is she couldn't take any kind of medication stronger than Tylenol. No, we're talking breaking both of her jaws, shaving bone, moving her chin, things with her nasal cavity, and she has a splint inside her mouth, and all her teeth are like rubber banded shut. And you can see all the incisions. They went in from here, both sides here and here, through her lip. You can't take what? Because it's the kid, I guess in the past, it's a choke hazard if you don't have your wits about you. So she can't be on anything strong. So I'm looking at her like, oh boy. I mean, because and then when she got the coronavirus check for they jabbed the thing up her nose, her eyes teared up. She's like, I hated that. And that was before
she
the
just had her
surgery.
whole jaw redone with the coronavirus.
Oh, the coronavirus test. She's like, seemed like somebody could figure out something better than that, which spoken like a true champion. And the other thing is post-op, she didn't like the way one of the medicines smelled, and she didn't want to take it. And so, back in the past, we would just get it down. But she's 17 now, and she's like, not taking it. So Missy was like, here. Because everybody has it's a team, and everybody has their role.
The role, yeah.
Well, my role is not the syringe. We're going down the hat, because that's the only way she can receive anything. There's no space. She can't open her mouth.
Yeah.
And you got to remember what I thought was fascinating in her model. They had to move her bottom one and come back. But now when you do that, it's not just that, because you're breaking a bone, but you don't want it to shatter. And so they were going to remove 2 teeth, but he said when we got in there, we didn't feel like the foundation was strong enough. And so there was a few things they didn't do, because they're putting plates and screws in there too. But you got to remember, some of these kids like her, if you keep doing stuff, their face will implode.
Mm-hmm.
You lose the structure.
Yeah.
So they have to weigh the risk during surgery of how exactly what risk are we going to take to maintain our created cranial structure. And so you're walking a line. Look, when he came out of surgery and talked to us, of course, it kept going longer and longer, and you're anxious.
Yeah.
But his first words were, that was hard. So I thought, oh boy, I didn't like that he said that, but and he came over and sat down. I could tell he was exhausted. I mean, it was, but I was going to say this earlier about these doctors. I am 99.9% sure they could make way more money doing, plastic surgery and, everything going on. I could just tell both of them. I could see it in their eyes. Most times they keep this professional relationship, which they did too. But these kids it's personal. I mean, these kids are suffering, and we have a dang conversation, because it's just something that's hard to describe in other medical procedures. I mean, you got basically kids
the reason this is so difficult is because she was born with this.
right.
And so that her body keeps trying to revert back
That's right.
to what she was born with. And I've never thought about it like that. In other words, we see it as just a flaw, but she was born this way. And so for whatever reason, with this birth defect, and she keeps reverting back, which is why you're fighting nature in a sense. And I never thought about that. That was really interesting.
It's like you're trying to construct something but the foundation was a certain way, and you keep trying to change the building, but the foundation had a crack in it.
Right.
And so you just, the power of God, creating something, because, a lot of people have asked me that. They're like, well, why did this happen? Which I think is a terrible, question, because when you look at stuff like John 9 and it's what you do about it. It is what it is. The spiritual side of her to me is way more important and look, way more fantastic. I mean, just amazing that she goes through all that. And Missy and I, we're looking like, how in the world? And she's just sitting there. You know, the first response we got from her after the surgery, which will tell you her mindset. I mean, because when I first saw her, I took it better than the past times just because they had told me, okay, look, she's gonna look rough. Her head's gonna be swollen. And so the nurse, the first nurse, she didn't really have an idea of what just happened, you know, because they don't write them a memo. So she was like, I mean, what movies do you think she would watch? And she was telling, you know, Missy that, because I mean, Mia, she's just out of it. And Missy's like, she's not going to be watching movies anytime soon. I mean, it was like, look at Exhibit A. You know,
right.
She was like, yeah, oh yeah, I guess so. Well, sometimes they bounce back. And she's like, no, we're good. Well, they started talking about TV shows, and she's like, what TV shows they like? And they started talking about one of them, Criminal Minds or something, which I know Mia watches that. They looked over and Mia had her thumb up. That was the first. Because we thought she was completely out of it. She's wheeled in. Like,
she heard Criminal Minds.
Yeah, let's watch that. But I thought, well, dang. I mean, not a moan or groan. I mean, she was aware of what she was hearing. So, you know, to back up just to where we are in the procedure, he said her top jaw is so small. He said that's why we had to have so many hands. We were basically all four of us taking turns trying to get this corrected, but it's so small of an area and you're dealing with so small of bones. And, you know, when I just thought about when you break a bone on purpose, I mean, how do you do it without shattering it?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's how tedious this thing is. You're basically trying to do it on purpose without it shattering.
Without hurting or worse.
But he said we feel good about it.
Let's take another break, guys.
So that was the procedure.
So you kind of were worried when he first started, but then as the discussion went on, you felt better.
Right. I mean, he's like, look, I feel like that team, we did the best we could do. And he said, you know, that we did as good. And he said when I looked at the final, you know, when we were finishing up, it matched closely to all the computer models that we had. And
projection. So
he said, you know, to pull that off, I feel great about. So she hasn't felt together, but
flew her back Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. We had to spend an extra day in the hospital just.
So that was when the surgery was done 4 days ago.
Wednesday.
That was Wednesday. It's been
Wednesday.
Today's Monday. So
yeah, it's been a few days. Now she has to go back tomorrow, so we have to fly her back. I'm spending an obscene amount of money on this procedure, but you know, I mean, I've been blessed. So, I mean, getting in a car for 5 hours with no pain med, to make it easier, and so we'll fly her back out tomorrow. Missy will go back. It was such a tedious surgery, and they want to look at her, and of course, the biggest thing is guarding against infection.
So has the swelling gone down?
No, and you know. Go down for 12 months. He said 12 months. He said, so don't feel like, because, you know, parents, we get panicky.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my goodness, it's been a month, you know, and she's still swollen. He's like, so 12 months is the target on that, which is a long time. And so he was telling Mia that before too. He was like, look, don't get down, you know, about how you look. I mean, she's a 17-year-old girl. And because he said it just takes an extreme amount of time for the swelling.
Well,
to go
how
down.
long would it be before she can like go back to school? And is she
originally
gonna be able to go back this year?
Oh yeah, originally they said, look, it's going to be up to her, but I mean we're thinking 6 weeks maybe. But he said, you know, Mia has been real resilient, so they said, you know, we forbid it for 2 weeks, but after a couple weeks, we'll look at how you're doing. And, of course, you know, now that from the coronavirus before. But now, you know, I just think we have an awesome staff. And, you know, I get even choked up, you know, talking about it about the staff. Because these guys, I mean, retiring or whatever. But, he has a passion for those kids he's been with. He's been with her
15
since
years,
2 or 3.
Yeah, that's what Missy said.
And
so he's seen the
like,
whole thing.
I mean, look, they're all in, trying to help them the whole way.
And now Missy told us on the podcast she was on last week that there's never been a 6-week period in Mia's life when she hasn't had to go to the doctor to get checked on her prior to these people.
Yeah, we just don't make a big deal about it. But every 6 weeks, Missy has her over
to go to Dallas.
Yeah. She's in Dallas. So I mean, you just think about it.
Your
whole
life. I mean, it's just it's incredible.
That's why people are like, well, why are you going back? I'm like, we're basically trying to do everything we can to make her as comfortable as possible because I know.
No doubt about it.
It's just
I'll admit
a lot of suffering.
I cringe just every time we talk about it because, like, I don't even like to go to the dentist. Like when they're in my mouth, I just
what you figure out is there's always you compartmentalize it, which is what we do. Sure. And this time was better for me. But you got to remember, this is not about me at all. I mean, I thought about this the other day. I was like, in our team of doctors who are basically the head coaches and the staff, and then you've got, Missy is, I mean, a star here. She's the isn't, and because there was a lot of blood clots in her mouth, and that's why the choke hazard comes in there. So she's. And they're still. I mean, when I left today, I heard that machine. That's going on every 5 minutes, and she's just. So during the night, I mean, like Missy, we have that huge sectional couch. Mia's on one side and Missy's on the other because that's basically what I do. I make runs to go get stuff that are needed, and so when you throw in that this is downtown Dallas, which. I cannot describe to you what I have experienced on the highways. So no hospital would let 2 parents in, except the day before we get there, one of the hospitals said we'll allow 2 parents.
They changed the policy.
So I'm like, well, we're moving hospitals.
I mean, you possibly couldn't even have been there.
Well, right, but I was just going to stay at the hotel. That was the plan. And then if they need something, I would run it up there. Yeah. And plus, I'm not being away from my daughter doing that. I mean, it's a highly sophisticated, complicated, dangerous surgery. I'm going to be on site, And but we moved, hospitals. But Missy's like, well, I can't find a hospital near here. I mean, a hotel. I was like, I'll be fine. But boy, Phil, it's a bunch of S curves. 8 to 10 lanes. I didn't know these people were doing this on a daily basis because I can't. When they say they need something, if it's 5 o'clock, guess what? I'm out there in 5 o'clock, and it became a NASCAR experience. When I turned it into NASCAR,
you've just explained the fuel behind the cancel culture. Because humanity's looking at humanity. Everybody's mad at everybody just for being alive on planet Earth.
I could totally get it. Let's take another break.
So I go out there, and at first you can't help it. You're just trying to just find a lane and stay out of trouble.
Because they're coming just...
This
is giving you meaning to stay in your lane, bro. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
So finally, it was frustrating. There was construction. So finally we get up there. There's an idiot trying to drive 100 miles an hour with no place to go. And so he veered in behind me and heard... tires screeching, look, smoke coming up. I looked at my side mirror. I just floored it. Clean air. And when I got to the hotel, I turned the news on thinking I'm going to see.
Read about the
it's interstate. We have a 14-car pilot. No, there's nothing. This is just a day in the life. There's no news. I watch it at 10 o'clock thinking, well, I'm going to see what happened in this wreck right beside. Nothing. I thought.
Not even worth bringing up.
It ain't. Well,
happens every day.
14. I felt then, I thought, okay, it's NASCAR. Because I felt like in my mind, I don't know why, that old Martin popped in my head. And it's like, guy got behind me and he tried to get me loose. And I was in turn 4, my spotter wasn't. But, us and the Coca-Cola You know, where they have all the sponsors, you know, the corn dog biscuit truck.
But you don't have a spotter. That's your problem on this
No
NASCAR race.
sponsor and no spotter. But every day after that, I just viewed it as a NASCAR race, and I was way better then because there's no speed limit. You go whatever everybody else is
That's
going.
exactly right.
And the pace setter, that's just what the pace is.
That's right.
You
But
know?
what's amazing about it, when you were doing that in Dallas, I was experiencing the same thing because we went to Atlanta. They're just like, I mean, they're just fascist about you get that mask over your nose. So I just, if it's within driving distance, I'm going to drive. Then I don't have to wear a mask. I can go to the bathroom when I want to because these people have just, it's out of control. So I drove to Atlanta, but when I was driving through there, I had the exact same experience. I thought, if I don't just go with the flow, I'm going to get killed. 'Cause if you just try to slow down and
you don't look at the speedometer, you just go.
Just go.
Finally, I told Missy, I was like, I gotta. This is, I gotta get closer. So I found the cheapest hotel there was the only one that had a room. And look, just a helpful hint for you inner city dwellers. There's a reason that there's a room open. When you can't find anything, and then all of a sudden, when they say, "Oh, we got plenty of rooms,"
That's right.
and
you're thinking I can take anything.
I mean, they were like making me fill out forms. You know, it's like, you know, no smoking or, you know, pay $1,000 penalty. I don't smoke, so I'm like, why in here last night? I was like, so I'm like,
They wonder why I've retreated to the woods.
But Phil, I have no point. My daughters haven't. You know, I mean, I have no. There. This is what I have to do. You know, and look, hotel in there. You know, yeah, she's over here trying to heal. So look, about 10:45 at night, I'm. You know, all I've done is come in there, and I've tried not to touch anything, and I just put my bag on the bed, and I got on there. I'm on the 6th floor, but I'm right by the side exit door, which I thought was a good thing.
Yeah, in case you got to get out.
10:45 at night, bang, 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 bang. A language I've never heard at a loud as room. Bang, 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 bang. I said, I have a gun. I reached over and grabbed my gun. Wrong room.
You're just yelling through the door.
Yeah. I hear 2 seconds of silence, and I hear the side door slam, and I hear the stairs because these walls are, you know. And I said, well, I found a universal language. I have a gun. He understood. I have a gun.
Al, you have to admit, a lot of stuff comes old Jason's way.
It's just
that's what happened.
every time he's on every week goes by.
The night, I felt like Eli Wallach, and I got one eye open. I'm like, because it was kind of scary.
I thought I would just tell that story. I thought you remember the old movie Arthur? It was Dudley Moore, and he played a drunk in the movie. So he got drunk. He's looking for Liza Minnelli's apartment. So he bangs on the door, and it's like 2 a.m. And this woman opens the trunk, and she says, "My husband has a gun." And he said,
I may have to look that up.
It's a good movie. It's really funny.
But
Don't watch the updated one. Watch the old one.
Of what happens in and around being in some city with your daughter having facial.
people
it's
live
just
like
tough.
this.
It's. I
Can
mean,
you
I thought,
imagine?
why would somebody live here on purpose? You know, which I'm sure they live outside the city, but I don't know. I mean, I got turned around multiple times, but one time I was in some real fancy neighborhood, and I'm like, "This was your plan? You got this big house here in the middle of this concrete
And you
jungle,
gotta get in and out of it.
and just driving around it." And look, I noticed when I got off the interstate, because I had to make a couple of runs to Chick-fil-A because we would get the
Milkshake?
vanilla, and like put the medicine in the milkshake. And I started looking at the cars. 1 out of 7, 8 cars, paint gone, fender bender.
Yeah.
It's not. He didn't run into you. He rubbed you. You know. Remember that?
Let's take one last break.
He said, "You go out there, and I want you to hit that pace car." And Tom Cruise was like, "Do what?" He said, you know, all the things that happen, you find these moments of humor. I mean, the car's going like NASCAR. I mean, it was kind of humorous, and I listened to a lot of worship music to try to keep my perspective. But I will say this. There are spiritual moments, the people that reached out to us during this whole process, I mean, it was just moving.
Yeah.
You know, right before Mia was going to be wheeled out, Tebow sent me a text, and it was just heartfelt and awesome. He's like, tell Mia this, and I was like, Tim Tebow just sent you a text. Well, she lit up, because it's like, I said, you know, you're something when Tebow is texting you before. Yeah. And so those kind of just little moments made it. But I wanted to share one that was, I guess, in all situations where something happens, and in this compartment in life, there's usually a moment that happens that I think, boy, this is a God moment. And the one I wanted to share before we run out of time was, I don't know when it was, probably day 2 or 3 of the post-surgery. I'm going to the car. I'm fixing to make a run, go do something, and I hear somebody say, Jace? And usually when I hear that, I think, oh, good. You know, I'm here. It's probably a fan. You know, it's not the time.
Right.
But for some reason, I just didn't think that. I turned around, and it out of their car. I mean, we're in a hospital, children's hospital, you know, parking lot. So I'm like, they're here for a reason.
Probably got a kid.
So, yeah. And I said, yeah. He said, man, I listen to y'all's podcast. I really love what y'all do, and love that you love. I don't know. When I shared the story with Mia and they shared their hearts, we just had a moment.
Yep.
And we started talking about spiritual things and different verses in the Bible and God's plan. And I thought, these people are so spiritually mature for young people. And he said, I'd like to just say a prayer. This guy's prayer was unbelievable. And I was wondering for days why I thought that was so awesome. And it hit me. I thought, it's real. You know, when you pray, and we all have those moments where we're praying, but it's, you know, we're just praying.
Yeah.
But when something's real, heartfelt in the moment. And so I wanted to share that to that couple, you know, because in that moment, I really needed that encouragement, and I'm sure they felt the same way. I mean, it's devastating to us who believe that, you know, God is a creator of life, to lose a child.
Yep.
And we're out here praying, saying God's got this and got a plan. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
I call those divine appointments, where
no doubt
we cross paths with people that either they need us or we need them, or both.
Yep, Jace, you have given new meaning with your, and Peter is discussing the disappearing of these present heavens and earth, and there's help on the way. In keeping with his promise, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. In keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth, the home of righteousness. So then, dear friends, since you're looking forward to this, make every effort to be found spotless, blameless, and at peace with him. He said, bear in mind that our Lord's patience means salvation, just as our brother, he says, help's on the way. Just, y'all just, it's a pretty good bummer, you know, just inner cities and the ramifications of all that and the momentary ailments we have and sickness and disease and all that. It's tough world.
Yep.
Well, the verse I continually thought about was, you know, in our weakness, God's power is shown through. And I remember Paul talking about thorn in the flesh. And look, we've all had multiple kids that we've prayed with, and look, and we've seen them, you know, die. Truly the ultimate answer. And I thought about how I was telling you yesterday, one of the more complicated things is because people are like, well, we don't understand how you can't just fix her.
Yeah.
And it made me think about, there's a story in Mark 8 where Jesus healed when he spit on the ground and he healed the guy, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, I see people, but they look like trees. And so he did something else. Well, that verse says he healed him, but then it says he made it where he could see more clearly.
Yeah.
And what I told Al, I said, I have a different view on that now. I've heard many sermons. People say, you're sometimes Jesus has to touch you again, and I'm not discounting that. But after this experience and listening to her doctors, I realized something, that for her, her tongue has been in front of her upper teeth. It's a small thing, but if you think about your mouth right now, your tongue, good. No wonder you have problems, eating and breathing and
talking.
Yeah, talking. So they're like, well, after this surgery, her tongue is going to be behind her teeth. He said, but you got to remember, it's going to take her months. It's one thing to fix her, and to go to the story that I was talking about in Mark.
Just getting used to that.
Well, it's one thing to be healed. It's another thing to know how to function after the healing.
Right.
Yep.
You don't have the experience. And so I told Al, I said, I really think that miracle was not just the healing, but then the ability to use what you haven't been using.
Right.
Suffering, Al, in many ways is a great teacher.
That's right.
Suffering is a great teacher.
Well, and it teaches everybody different things.
That's right.
I mean, that's
and our approach is like, I hope you learn something, but don't give me any suffering. And,
right.
because that's what they say. The only true major surgery in life is the one done on you.
That's right.
Yep.
And it's just hard to look at someone, like in Mia's case. And I just try to make this kind of weird in my mind. I think she has this thorn in her life. I don't want to be a nut. I mean, the only way we're communicating now is a whiteboard. Yep. And, you just think about how lonely this day after day after day after day. You're just, and I got her phone. I thought she would, but just don't be a thorn. Try to be the rose.
Yes, right.
In this situation.
Just kind of been hanging mode.
But I wanted to say I appreciate everybody's prayers, because I really believe that's why she did so well. Because it certainly wasn't pain medication, because she hadn't had anything but Tylenol.
That's amazing. So our last guest, Jace, that filled in for you was a guy named Kenny that has some hamburger restaurants over in the Carolinas. Good guy, great story. And he was here on his birthday, which was also his rebirthday, because he got baptized here last year. And so he left a check for Miamu. He brought it with him, which is awesome.
Great.
So it was like, he was like, be sure and give this to Jace. Tell him I'm praying for him.
That was nice of it.
But what we do with the people that contribute is we try to have those moments like I had in the parking lot. We pay, one of their doctor's visits or whatever, but we give them hope. We give them the information, and then we plug them into the network of other people, because really that community is what you got to have.
Right.
And so I'm proud to say that we're one of the few charities that help these kids that we give 100% of the money to the people.
Right.
So everything
there's no admin, because you're just doing it.
Is any money for our stuff, because you know what? The Lord blessed me with it. It's the greatest thing I can spend it on.
Prayers going for a quick as recovery as possible.
No, thank y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed Podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes.